Oh,
It was a good
don't.
shit.
So this is being recorded to the cloud, week 12, part 2. And we did have a lot of questions. Megan, that was great. I think Stephanie was a perfect person to bring in here with all her rich experiences. And yet she's really kind of starting all over fresh again. So she's one with experience in the field, but has to know the field totally because she wants to get tenure. And so she's, you know, she's looking for new topics and new papers to write and all that. And that's exciting, new books. She's done a lot for someone who's just entered her first tenure track position, So just like my colleague in Korea, Min Young-do, she went to Samsung for so long, and 16 years after she got her doctorate that she got a tenure track position in Korea. So there's no set pathways, I guess, is the thing. People want to have some assurity of what they will get after getting an IST master's or certificate or doctorate. There's really no assurity. There's some things we can tell you might happen, but that's true of any degree these days. There's so much flux and so many different opportunities, so many companies rising up and then falling by the wayside oftentimes. Economics plays a role. Interest rates right now is playing a role in the viability of many in the high tech industries. And so, I wanted to run a learning center. That was my goal. I wanted to get a master's degree and run a learning center. And lo and behold, I only need one more semester of coursework to get a doctorate. So I did it. I wasn't planning to do it, just happened, So, and then I wanted to build software, and I ended up doing that later in life, building different software tools and whatnot. But I don't want to do that again. So, I mean, there's things that you might have in your goals. You might do it for a while and then decide that's not right for you, and you move on to something else. In the field of ed tech or IST or learning, design, and technology, there are many opportunities to explore. If it doesn't work, try another path, just like Stephanie Moore did. And so I recommend you read the links I gave you to her CV and her LinkedIn page and other things, because it's eye-opening to look at someone like Stephanie and know how accomplished she is, and how, I think, what a serious thinker she is within the field. And yet finding a tenure track position wasn't automatic for her. And there are many people, many of my former students, who haven't found a tenure track position and would love to have one, but the competition is kind of fierce out there. And with more students now coming from China than ever before who want to stay in this country after, there's more competition in looking for jobs as well. But tenure track positions aren't the only thing to look for. In other cases, might be administrative roles, might be instructional designer roles, might be program manager roles, might be technology specialist roles, might be curriculum planning, assessment, evaluation. There's so many different degree possibilities or job possibilities. So any comments before I get started? Megan, are you sad for the Phillies, or you really don't care about the baseball team in Philadelphia?
I mean, it would have been nice if they had won, but especially since the Astros knocked the Yankees out, I would have liked to have seen them not make it, but it's okay.
Are you a Yankees fan?
I'm above all, I'm not really a huge baseball fan, but if I had to choose as a,
okay,
New Yorker, I gotta,
Oh yeah. Okay, yeah. The Yankees over the Mets then, or both?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the Yankees probably if I had to choose.
Yeah. See, growing up in Milwaukee, the Yankees were playing us all the time and beating us up. So I loved it when the Brewers beat the Yankees anytime. It didn't happen, a lot, but in the 80s, it did happen a lot. Not so much in the 90s, but in recent years, again, they're pretty evenly matched in the past 5 years. In fact, the Brewers have a better record than the Yankees over the past 4 or 5 years, I believe. If you look that up, there aren't many teams that have a better record than the Brewers. Who just haven't done well in the playoffs as good as the team that's there. As Bo knows everything. Now, what teams do you like, Bo, in baseball?
I'm a South Side Chicago fan,
Oh yeah, the
White Sox guy. Yeah, but I'm gonna respond to your comment yesterday about the Bears. I was at the game, and Justin Fields set a rushing record for quarterbacks. That was pretty cool. Even though we lost,
How many yards did he get?
178 yards.
Wow.
Yeah, 1 rushing touchdown, 3 passing touchdowns.
So he's the quarterback of the future.
I'm hoping so.
Yeah. They
At least,
finally will
yeah.
have they haven't had a quarterback for so long. I mean,
Ever?
Trubinsky, maybe, or Rex Grossman, who grew up a mile from my house.
Indiana boy. Yep.
Yeah. My son went to high school with him, or, he was, around that time. So, yeah. So Southside. So I grew up on the Cubs, when
Okay.
the Braves
gotcha.
left for Atlanta. I got the Cubs on the radio, WGN. So I had all the Cubs baseball cards and everything. Yeah. So I was a huge Cubs fan growing up, and Brewers when we finally got a team back in the city. So, okay. So that's out of the way. And, I'm glad you like the Bears because that makes one of us.
Bear down.
I like the stadium and like the location. I do want to go to the game there. That would be so much fun to go to.
I've got season tickets if you want to go.
I may take you up on that. When are they playing the Packers there? Or they already played them in Chicago.
It'll be December 4th of the 6th. I can't remember the date. Yeah, that's the next game there. Yep.
Oh, well, we'll talk. Let's
Yep.
see if you get a passing grade. No.
I'm gonna mute myself now.
I just had to throw that in there. Okay, that's being recorded, so you can use that against me now. Okay, I think people have used other things much more tame against me. Okay, let's see if this is the right one. So I gave a keynote, I guess it was an invited talk / plenary session at a conference in Korea and Australia on learning loss last Friday night. And I gave a talk in China on smart learning environments, and I combined them and to create this, I had a bunch of questions about smarter learning environments. And so I titled this "Time to Wake Up from Our Innovative Learning Dreams and Make Smarter Learning a Reality." Okay. So, I'm not sure if I made it a reality, but in the chat window, if I haven't asked you before, and maybe I asked you this question earlier in the semester, have you changed your teaching philosophy or learning philosophy since COVID started? Put A, B, or C if you've changed a little or a lot. Put a D or an E if you haven't changed much in terms of your teaching and learning philosophy. Just curious. And I'm going to get rid of, while you're doing that, I'm going to hide the video panel. Okay, so we've got the chat, a C, a B, and an A. Well, there we go. And an A, and an A. So we're all in the midst of change in some ways, right? So let me go to the next question. During the pandemic, did the pandemic make you smarter or dumber? A, much smarter. B, a bit smarter. C, you don't know. D, a bit dumber. Or E, definitely dumber. I'm curious to see what you say. So we've got a chagrin guy putting a D out there and admitting being honest and genuine. And Megan sometimes being a bit smarter. Okay. Maybe it's a trick question, actually, in some ways. You have to be dumb before you can get smarter.
I changed jobs the week of lockdown.
Oh, God.
It's been a learning curve, very, very much upwards since then. So, yes.
So it forced you to think and forced you to learn. So you're definitely smarter. You were dumber for a week when you said, "Oh my God, did I really change jobs right now?"
There was a lot of questioning, that's for sure. Yes.
Yeah. Could I have done that? Could I seriously, All right, that's good. Good. So, you have to be challenged in order for you to explore new territory. And so you have to feel like you don't know something before you seek out new information. So it's a bit of both. It should be a bit of both. Everything should be a bit of both. You have to feel like you have to snooze a bit, but you have to wake back up, right? But we want to have what are our dreams of the future, our visions for the future. How should we design learning ecologies, as Stephanie Moore would say? What would that look like? How do we create smarter learning environments? How do we create these abilities to push students ahead, to make them generative in their learning quests, to equip them with the skills to be able to seek out new knowledge when they need it, and to know when they don't know something? How do we create these smarter learning environments? Because the millions and millions of jobs in the US alone, hundreds of millions of jobs will be lost over the next decade or two around the world. And in the US, 60 million jobs. Well, we have all those job losses. You're going to need reskilling. You're going to have people that have to find new ways to get upskilled, reskilled, and certified and recertified. And we can't just be looking out at our Webb telescopes and seeing new galaxies out there. We have to think about ourselves on this planet and what are the possibilities for all of us. And over the past 30 years, we've had a lot of changes happening in front of us. My friend Jimmy Wales, who dropped out of our doctoral program in the School of Business at IU, created Wikipedia, and we have open courseware and all this open educational resources. We have tons of courses online, books online that we can embed in our classes. Thanks to this gentleman who created the webs 30 some years ago, Tim Berners-Lee. I had the chance to sit next to him on a bus after I gave a keynote in Riyadh. He gave the opening keynote. I gave day 3, and we went to dinner, and I got to chat with him about creating the web. And really, he's a runner. He likes to talk about GPS and his running quests in different places. So it was kind of a fun conversation a little over a decade ago. And we're going to be living longer and hopefully more healthy lifestyles. And so we need to find ways to create ecosystems that are lifelong learning in nature, that support human beings across the lifespan from 0 to 80 to 90 to 100, whether it's short courses and YouTube video based classes, or boot camps, or online nano degrees or certificates that evolve into a master's degree maybe, or a doctoral program. These hopes and dreams that we all have to be contributing to society throughout our lives are going to be dependent upon the types of environments that you and I and others design. There are going to be hundreds of millions of learners waiting for us. And so our field has become more and more important. During the past couple of months, I'm seeing increasing attention being placed on finding out what did work during the pandemic, and thinking about the gains that were possible during the past 3 years that weren't possible previously because of the redesign of college and high school and K-12 campuses as a whole. And so my friend Jeffrey Young, who works for EdSurge now, he used to work for the Chronicle of Higher Ed. He interviewed academic innovation leaders and had a little report that came out. And he also interviewed people at Stanford who have a brand new report on emergency remote instruction, which Stephanie was talking about, and how university identities are changing as a result of the pandemic. So this report is free. I haven't made my notes available yet in Dropbox, but when I do, you can click the link and read the report from Stanford. There's also one from Harvard and other universities out there that have been reacting to the pandemic. They're my friends like Mahabali in Egypt, who have written reports talking about wellness and psychosocial emotional needs being met in online environments and new ways to address them, that online learning doesn't have to take place in isolated, deserts, that in fact we can find ways to collaborate, interact, share, and make new meanings in these highly engaging, interactive, and collaborative environments such as Zoom, believe it or not. Even Canvas can have interactive and engaging environments. And so it turns out you can create a community in your Zoom classroom, and you don't have to rely on just the flipping the classroom and posting your lectures online. You can have chat room discussions and breakout room interactions and other kinds of things in these online synchronous types of classes. But what I wrote about 6 years ago and presented in New Zealand at a conference in Hamilton, which had their social event at Hobbiton, where the real Hobbit movie, Lord of the Rings, was filmed. At that conference, I came out with a paper, presentation that talked about 30 ways that learning is changing. If you're taking my R678 course next spring, spring of 2024, I'll talk about this again in there, but I'm assuming many of the students in R622 will no longer be students, so I'm throwing this in. Some of you may have heard me lecture on my 30 ways learning is changing, and if so, you can turn off the machine right now. You don't have to listen to me, but I promise I'll cover much new information, since you may have heard me a year and a half ago or a year ago. In May 2022, the Chronicle of Higher Ed had several articles talking about how students are disengaged and how we can overcome this disengagement crisis out there. And so I highly recommend downloading 1, 2, or 3, or all 4 of the articles that came out in the Chronicle of Higher Education about the lack of engagement in an online environment and how learning's not fun for people anymore, and how we can make it more lively and engaging and interactive and delightful, if you will. So how to solve the disengagement crisis? How to overcome the stunning level of student disconnection, stressed outness, frustration, anxiety. And yet, just 2 days ago, a new article in the Chronicle of Higher Education talking about how students are still struggling with engagement, how instructors are struggling with engagement, and how they might be able to overcome it. So again, these articles were written all since May or March of last year, of 4 or 5 different articles on engagement. The last one that just came out on November 3rd. If you're not a Chronicle of Higher Ed subscriber and want to read the article, let me know, and my assistant Seth will download it, PDF it for all of us. And I see there's something in the chat. I want to make sure I didn't. Did I put the recording on? I think I put it on. Let me just stop this here, and it is on. The recording's on. I just snuckily got that on. It's on. Okay. So first bubble of the 3 bubbles is on engagement. So 1 on engagement, 1 on accessibility, and 1 on personalization or customization or individualization of learning. These 3 bubbles each contain 10 ways that learning is changing. Learning being more social, like through social media, and Twitter and Instagram and WeChat and Kakao Talk and Line and Facebook, all these social medias. LinkedIn is a social media tool. Learning is also more mobile, and we see that all the time in terms of our learning. And some devices are getting expandable text now, which was predicted a decade ago, and it's starting to finally happen. So we can take our degree programs on our mobile devices, or at least part of them, aspects of them. Learning is more digitally rich, and so much of the news that we read today, we can also find online in some way, shape, or form. We have videos that might support the article, or interviews of the experts out there, and so forth. And I embed news all the time in my classes. I think it's an exciting way to teach, because you never know what's going to appear in the news, what's going to come out the next day. Learning is much more collaborative, and that's something that Megan brought up earlier, and so did Bo and others, that we want to have a peer-based, collaborative, rich environments for our learning settings. Learning is more immersive, augmented reality, virtual reality, other kinds of immersive the nature of our learning environments. Learning is more game-like, more visual, more adventurous, more touch sensor. These are all ways of turning the tide away from disengagement towards encapsulating our learners, getting them enthused about learning. And so we might use Wordle games or other kinds of games with our students to capture their interests and their curiosities. We might use Paul Kim's tool, or I should say Sunmi Sol's tool that she built at Stanford to get students to question ask and evaluate questions and interact around those questions to gain literacy skills. And we might have competitions, not just for question asking, but for designing products and projects, to think more digitally rich about our environments out there, whether we're using Padlet as a tool to showcase our robots or our inventions with our peers and with people at other schools and colleges and universities in tinkering, making, and sharing and reflecting the TMSR model from Dr. Hee-Jun An, who visited 3 or 4 weeks ago in this class. So we have interactive and engaging STEM instruction today using Maker Labs and other kinds of technologies, which we had presentation on at the beginning of the semester. We can also learn about new discoveries, whether it's dinosaurs or something else, because we are linked in through hypermedia, which Stephanie mentioned as well, to the news out there. And again, every day there's something being discovered and shared and talked about and discussed in social media, whether it's, learning through immersive worlds of ancient Egypt or Rome or Stonehenge or the Louvre or the human heart, to get us to maybe understand something about the circulatory system or something else through seeing a representation in our technologies that we're holding in our hands, whether it's augmented reality or virtual reality or something else. And we're entering into the age of the metaverse today. And I actually would say that most people out there who talk about the metaverse are not quite sure what it's going to entail in the future. They're just involved in the hype cycle. And we're early on, we get the hype cycle before we actually have inventions that come to fruition that enable us, who might be at West Virginia University or Northern Illinois or Alabama A&M or Cal State Dominguez Hills or Morehouse College. All these universities, these 10, are launching the metaversities. They're getting us to think about what's possible through VR and embedding the tools in their curriculum. This was announced in July 7th. Again, if you heard me speak on this a year ago, a lot of these notes are from the last couple of months. I've totally overhauled my talk on this. And hopefully you find this of value, Christian, if you're watching this later, because I know you've heard me before. Even thinking about holography, which is something that I pondered as a high school senior or junior, that's probably senior, taking physics. I wrote my papers on holography, holographic images, and how we might bring instructors from a remote location into our classes to have a conversation with, and it would make them appear as though they're live in our audience. So like Contact North from Canada, which I mentioned earlier, we're this week's reading, in fact, or listening, we can hear from Maxim Jean-Louis talk about making what Contact North does. That's article number 8 for this week. They have technologies there that let instructors go from Toronto to the far northern parts of Ontario to interact with people who might not even have running water or roads, but have electricity that enable them to get this holographic image up into their First Nation villages and cities. Second area is of how learning is changing is becoming more pervasive in terms of access. And soon we're getting near 20 after, so maybe I'll cover the second one, and I'll wait till number 3 till next week after our 2 speakers, assuming we don't go too long with our first two guests. pervasive access includes, as Stephanie pointed out, most learning is informal. Most learning is chit-chatting with other colleagues and peers that on our learning journeys. It's not traditional classroom-based sit-down, four walls in front of us. A lot of learning today, like we had, is direct from experts like Stephanie popping in, using Zoom synchronously. So a lot of learning synchronous, it's online, it's open, it's immediate. When researchers discover the largest squid ever in the world, the colossal squid in Antarctica, and thought in Wellington, New Zealand, on thawing the ice maybe a year later, that discovery can be made live to the world, to kids in classrooms around the world. It's immediate. Science is immediate. We don't have to wait for it to get into textbooks, and we can get immediate access through the web, through Discovery News or some podcast show or TV show online. It's seamless today. I mean, it's seamless bringing Stephanie in from New Mexico, or if she was still back in Virginia, or last week in Sungjeong coming from Korea. She could have been coming from her old university in Japan. Tony Bates from Vancouver, Canada, you know, and it's free. You know, this is changing the equation, the learning equation for people in the global South, people in less privileged parts of the world, people who maybe lack traditional forms of education. They can now learn from Stanford, Harvard, Berkeley, or Indiana, or wherever in the world, because those mobile devices they're carrying around have leapfrog generations of technology that we never thought would be possible in our lifetimes. We knew it would happen eventually, but COVID has put this on an accelerator to enable people to think about transforming their lives, because now we have access that we never really envisioned before, and we can become digital marketing specialists, documentary producers, coding geniuses, because we can take classes from Stanford live whenever we want to. And so in Silver Lining in December, we're going to have people who are in charge of this coding class that has no teachers, but has 900 voluntary teachers for students like 10 or 20,000 at over 100 countries taking these courses for free. So learning is more online, again, more online, more informal, more global, more video-based. You know, we're moving from an age of video, from Wikipedia to Videopedia. And now it's young people. They're seeing from the pandemic, they learned a lot during the pandemic. All the young people out there, 18 to 24, 30, 35, they're saying, why do I need to go to IU face-to-face? I can just learn online. So universities who spent all this money on dormitories, now we're not talking about tier 1 universities, the mid-level universities like you know, Indiana State or Western Michigan, or something even smaller than that, like University of Wisconsin La Crosse or Oshkosh. They're going to have some problems in the coming decades, because those 18 to 24-year-olds might not be coming in won't have as much of a presence as they've had in the past. My prediction, which tends to pan out here. And this is Southern New Hampshire University, where Heather Tilburg works, who I just mentioned last hour. We'll try and bring her in, not this semester, well, maybe this semester, but probably next semester. You know, we can learn online from the Khan Academy. You know, Salman Khan was trying to help his nieces and nephews, and it went viral around the world. And Gates Foundation, Bill Gates loves this, and he gave him millions of dollars to create assessments around his free training in algebra and geometry and psychology and whatnot. Salman Khan is like Aristotle was back in the day. He knows everything. You know, he left his hedge fund venture capital company, and now he's a teacher to the world. I once gave a keynote for Blackboard, the company, and he was the other keynote. They flew him in on a private jet. They flew me economy. Needless to say, the stipend they gave me wasn't as much as his, but I did give them their money's worth. It was quite, that one we had a transition of like 5 minutes maybe between my talk and the previous talk, and I had all these handouts and all these props and a lot of helpers, and we got it done. It was just, sometimes it's really interesting when you're a keynote speaker. I mean, they line you up, shotgun approach sometimes. Anyways, Khan Academy is working at Arizona State to provide free education to the world. And then I was contacted this weekend by Mark Nichols. He interviews experts in online learning. He's going to interview me during right after Thanksgiving, but he has a podcast show, and he makes it free to the world. My podcast show is free to the world, and I highly recommend Mark. He's interviewed some of the most famous people in ed tech, IST. He has a website, just look for it, onlinelearninglegends.com. And there are more podcasts. And by the way, if anyone has a favorite podcast show, please send me, or a favorite webcast show or video channel or YouTube channel. Maybe I can include it in my talk for Contact North in 2 weeks. So please send me an email with your favorite shows, and I will put your name in my slides and say thank you. So learning is more free and open. You know, California, the state of California got $150 million to experiment with online educational resources, open educational resources. 23 community colleges produced 34 zero-cost textbooks and certificates, saving 23,000 students $42 million. Not a bad return on investment, 858% return on investment from the 5 million originally invested. So we're talking serious money. We're talking serious learning, I hope, too. I also have my free book, Tech Variety, which I've promoted in here several times and so forth. One of my students last semester created a tutorial, a documentary on the 10 principles of motivation in that book. She spent 360 hours for her final assignment. I don't recommend it. Don't do that. You'll kill yourself. She did it. I didn't prompt her. She, on her own, Linda Smith, created this. So this is in the playlist if you would like to watch. Now we've got a new version of that book, as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago. Elaine Coe and I, with the designer of it, Sanjay Mishra, who is our guest next week from the Commonwealth of Learning. He's the one who got us to write the new version and created the free class on the book. So you can take the class on the pedagogical activities for motivating learners online, whether it's flipping the class or word clouds or jigsaw or role play like Sunmei. Activity 61 is about role play Sunmei. So all these things kind of get people to be more interactive and engaging. Now, my conference last Friday had a 2-day session. It was Thursday and Friday. US time is Friday, Saturday in Korea. That's a screenshot from the conference. Anyone could attend it. It was free for the world. I mean, like, you know, you could hear from all these experts, and it was quite good. But I'll admit that I had a session in China last week that had 2,500 people or something like that. And one last month was 7,500. This one was a lot smaller, a lot more intimate, a lot more one-to-one chats and so forth. So it was a different vibe, different feel. I don't know which I like. Now, the person in the upper left, KJ Kim, was my top colleague for such a long time. We published more things than anyone else in the world. She's a trooper. She's a hard worker. She's at Dongguk University, which is a Buddhist university in the south part of Seoul. Ji Yoon Lee on the right-hand side is my former student, and her husband and sons were here several years ago for her sabbatical for a couple of years. So we can have online global panels, which we had last February in my 511, 678 class. So my colleague, there's Christian Smeltzer, who's in this class. My colleagues, Yayoi Anzi, Tom Reynolds, Tom Reeves, Okwa Lee. I went to grad school with Okwa Lee and Tom Reynolds. Veronica Acosta's there, Dorit Maurer. We could have a panel. There's Mena Ju, Shishi, a lot of people came. We had a panel. What's the past, present, and future of online learning going to look like? Based on, we all went to grad school together back in the day. You know, 30 years later, what do you envision the future to look like? More than 30 years later. You can have discussions in video chat format using what was Flipgrid. And some of you may recognize yourself in the split group, maybe not, maybe you're in this one. So having discussions in video or synchronous and so forth, or come to our Silver Lining for Learning podcast show each week with Chris Didi and Punya Mishra and Young Zhao. We bring in people from around the world, whether it's New Zealand, Australia, parts of Africa, Italy, Cyprus and beyond, USA, Canada, and talk about what's happening, new models of education, the future of education. And we save these recordings, and we're eventually going to create audio files in podcast format, whether we bring in my friend Jenny Pennycook, who studies the Adelie penguin in Antarctica and sends it to hundreds of schools around the world, curriculum activities around the penguins, or Nepali kids studying MOOCs and learning English online. That's my current research project, looking at these kids' self-directed learning and their motivation. So the third area or bubble is about customization. And I'm about the half-hour mark. So I think I'll stop there and cover part 3 and my questions I have for smart learning next week. And I will share my slides in Dropbox. Bo, what else would I promise to share? Anything else?
Your love of the Chicago Bears.
Oh yeah, that too. Yeah. My secret love of the Chicago Bears and
That's
George Hallis and Gail Sayers and Nick Butkus and all those guys. Yeah.
Gail Sayers used to own a computer shop up here in Lafayette, actually. Got to meet him a couple times. Yeah.
He lived there?
He owned, it was a computer business probably back in the late 90s, early 2000s before he passed away. Yeah.
Did he go to school there?
No, I'm really not sure why it was here. It was called Sayers Computer Source.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they had a fan base there, of course. That's probably why,
Possibly.
Yeah, that's probably why. I'm sure there's a big fan base from Northern Indiana looking at Chicago Bears for sure. Okay, comments, questions? Was that helpful? The big picture about technology. So I've given you R2D2, Education 2020, Tech Variety, and what I'm calling METC3, which is Motivation, Ed Tech, and Critical Thinking, Creative Thinking, and Cooperative Learning, or Collaborative Learning. C3, C cubed, METC cubed. That's my new model. I might have given you one other. So I've been trying to give you frameworks, models, or ways to think about what's happening in our educational space for you to create learning environments that are engaging, interactive, and powerful. And I hope you latch on to at least one of those frameworks or models or ideas, or create your own as your final project. Really, my goal is to inspire you to think, well, what maybe you don't totally resonate with R2D2, but might be some variation of it or some enhancement to it and so forth. So that's what I'm kind of embedding every other week in here. Is I've been showcasing something different. It's been 5 or 6 times I've broken in and lectured in here. Again, I haven't taught this course before, so I'm really not sure when I'm going to embed lectures in the class, because it's kind of evolving as we go. But hopefully, like every other week or every third week is an effective technique. What do you think? Every week would be too much, and I don't have 15 models. So, well, I think I'll stop the recording to week 12, part 2. Thanks for coming. See you next week with Sanjay Mishra and hopefully Michael Spector and part 2 of that talk I just went through. And we are getting near the end. And if some of you need another day or 2 for the final assignments, it's okay. But a couple weeks might not be. But I gave you a 7-day extension on those already. And don't stress out, Okay, bye-bye.